The first thing Liam Fox became aware of was the silence. Not ordinary silence, the kind he'd known drifting alone between maintenance sectors while everyone else slept, but a deeper, heavier silence, like the air itself was holding its breath. It pressed against his ears with a soft, constant pressure, broken only by a faint, rhythmic hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He didn't open his eyes immediately. Years of working on unstable orbital platforms had taught him one important survival rule. When you wake up somewhere unfamiliar, your brain deserves at least 3 seconds to panic privately before your body makes any decisions. 1. He was not dead. Dead people, as far as he knew, did not experience soft humming noises. 2. He was lying down. That alone was suspicious. He rarely lay down voluntarily. 3. He did not remember lying down. His eyes opened. Above him stretched a ceiling that curved like the inside of a vast shell, smooth and seamless, faintly glowing with pale silver light. The surface was not static. It moved, not visibly, not in any way he could measure, but in a slow, organic rhythm that made it feel less like a structure and more like something alive. He stared at it. "Well," he said hoarsely to no one in particular, "that's new." His voice sounded small in the room, absorbed quickly by the curved surfaces around him. He pushed himself upright, expecting stiffness, expecting pain, expecting something to protest his movement. Instead, the surface beneath him shifted subtly, adjusting to his weight like liquid, pretending to be solid. He froze. "Oh, good," he whispered. "The bed is sentient." That was never a promising start. He swung his legs over the side and planted his feet on the floor, which was smooth, cool, and reassuringly non-sentient. He waited a moment, half expecting it to react, but it did nothing except exist politely. That was encouraging. He stood. His balance held. His limbs responded normally. No restraints, no visible injuries. He performed a quick personal inventory. Head functional, arms still attached, legs present and cooperative, dignity questionable, memory. He stopped. That was where the inventory ended. His last clear memory was of Sector 12's atmospheric regulator. It had been cycling irregularly, producing a noise that could only be described as deeply annoying. He'd been elbow deep in its diagnostic panel, arguing with it under his breath like it had personally betrayed him. And now he was here, wherever here was. He turned slowly, taking in the room. It was vast but not empty. The walls curved inward like the inside of some enormous sculpted bone, threaded with faint lines of soft white light that pulsed gently, like distant lightning frozen beneath translucent skin. There were no visible doors, no windows, no obvious exits. He frowned. "Okay," he said carefully. "Either I've been abducted, or I finally fell asleep inside a maintenance shaft, and this is my brain trying to apologize." The hum deepened slightly. He didn't like that. He took a step forward. The air was warm, carrying a faint metallic sweetness he couldn't identify. It smelled clean, too clean, like nothing in this room had ever decayed, or broken, or needed repair, which frankly made him feel unwelcome. He reached out cautiously and touched the wall. It was smooth but not cold. It responded to his contact with a faint ripple of light that spread outward from his fingertips, fading after a moment. He jerked his hand back. "Nope," he said firmly. "Not touching anything else." A voice spoke. Human. It was soft, calm, close. He spun around. She stood behind him. He had no idea how long she'd been there. She was tall, her posture straight and effortless, her expression composed in a way that suggested control was not something she practiced, but something she simply was. Her face was unmistakably human in structure, eyes, nose, mouth arranged in familiar symmetry. But there was something different in the stillness of her features, something older. And her ears. They were long, longer than any human anatomy allowed, extending gracefully behind her head in smooth arcs, their shape elegant and precise. His brain, still attempting to assemble reality from fragments, produced the only useful thought it could manage. "Oh," he said. She watched him. Her eyes were steady, observing him with quiet intensity, like he was a phenomenon she had been waiting to witness. He pointed vaguely at her ears. "I feel like I should apologize," he said carefully, "but I'm not entirely sure what for yet." She did not react immediately. That somehow made it worse. "You are Liam Fox," she said. It wasn't a question. He hesitated. There were several possible responses to being identified by an unknown alien woman in a room that might be alive. He chose honesty. "Yes," he said, "unless this is some kind of elaborate intervention." Silence stretched between them. She took one step closer. He did not move. Up close, he could see that her skin was flawless. Not artificially perfect, but naturally precise, as if evolution had taken its time. Her eyes reflected the room's pale light, their depth impossible to measure. "You do not remember how you arrived," she said. Again, not a question. He considered lying. He didn't. "No," he said. She studied his face. He resisted the urge to apologize again. Another moment passed. Then she spoke. "Do you know why you are in my room, human?" The question settled into the air between them. Something in her voice made it clear that this moment mattered. Liam opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because the truth was simple. He had no idea. Liam stared at her. There were many possible answers to her question. None of them were useful. He could lie. He could invent a dramatic explanation involving espionage, forbidden technology, or heroic sacrifice. He could pretend he remembered everything and hope context filled in the gaps later. Instead, he said the only thing his brain was capable of producing. "No," he replied. Her expression did not change. That somehow was worse than anger. Silence stretched between them, thick and deliberate. She did not look disappointed. She did not look surprised. She simply looked certain, as if his answer had confirmed something she had already accepted long ago. Liam cleared his throat. "I assume," he said carefully, "this is the part where you explain." Another pause. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with quiet precision, like she was measuring something invisible. "You do not remember me." It was not accusation. It was observation. Liam hesitated. He searched her face, hoping some buried fragment of recognition would surface. Some memory. Some familiar detail. Nothing came. "I don't think so," he admitted. "But in my defense, I've met a lot of people I didn't expect to see again." Her eyes remained fixed on his. "For you," she said, "it was a moment." He waited. "For me," she continued, "it was not." That was not comforting. He shifted his weight slightly, resisting the urge to step back. "I want to be clear," he said, "that if I accidentally offended you at some point in the past, I am extremely open to apologizing retroactively." She ignored that. "7 years ago," she said, "you were stationed on orbital exchange platform Kipri." The name struck something faint in his memory. Kipri, a neutral trade station, mid-tier importance, mostly supply coordination and maintenance support. He'd been assigned there briefly, back when his career was still trying to figure out whether it wanted to exist. He frowned. "I was," he said slowly. Her gaze did not waver. "You were responsible for environmental systems maintenance in Docking Sector 4. His frown deepened. That was specific. "Yes," he said cautiously. She took another step closer. He resisted the powerful instinct to take one step back. "I spoke to you there," she said. Liam blinked. His brain immediately began flipping through old memories like a disorganized archive. Docking Sector 4, broken oxygen recyclers, faulty pressure seals, a coffee dispenser that had actively hated him, and people, so many people, merchants, pilots, diplomats, technicians, aliens. He had spoken to many aliens, some polite, some rude, one that had tried to sell him something that was definitely alive and definitely illegal. He focused on her face. Nothing. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "I don't—" "You did not know who I was." He stopped. Something in her tone shifted. Not anger. Something else. "You believed I was a traveler," she continued. "A civilian observer." He felt a faint ripple of unease. "That sounds like something I would believe," he admitted. Her eyes searched his. "You spoke to me." He nodded slowly. "I've been known to do that." She ignored the attempt at humor. "You were repairing an atmospheric stabilizer," she said. You had removed its outer casing. That was accurate. He remembered that stabilizer. It had been stubborn. He'd respected it for that. I asked you, she continued, if humans always spoke openly about their leaders. Liam froze. That memory surfaced suddenly, sharp and vivid. A figure standing nearby, watching him work, listening. He had assumed she was just another curious traveler. He had been tired, frustrated, covered in grease. He hadn't cared who was listening. He had answered honestly. He winced slightly. Oh no, he murmured. Her gaze sharpened. You said, she continued calmly, that authority without humility was fragile. He closed his eyes briefly. That sounded exactly like something he would say when he was exhausted and mildly irritated. He opened them again. You also said, she added, that leaders who surrounded themselves with obedience would eventually forget how to recognize truth. He stared at her. His stomach dropped. I say a lot of things, he said weakly. You said, she continued, that fear was an inefficient foundation for loyalty. He exhaled slowly. Yes, he admitted. The room was very quiet. She watched him carefully. You did not know you were speaking to the Queen of Obscura? He blinked. His brain stopped. It did not slow down. It stopped. He stared at her ears, then her face, then her ears again, then her face. Queen, he repeated. She inclined her head slightly. The motion was subtle, but it carried the weight of absolute confirmation. He inhaled, exhaled, considered several possible responses, chose the one most consistent with his lifelong survival strategy. I would like to formally apologize to your entire civilization. She did not react. He pressed on. I was tired, he explained, and hungry, and the stabilizer was being difficult. Still nothing. He gestured vaguely. In my defense, I insult everyone equally. That apparently was not reassuring. She stepped closer. You did not insult me. He stopped. Her voice was steady. You spoke without fear. He didn't know what to do with that. Most rulers, he suspected, preferred fear. It was efficient, predictable, safe. She studied his face. You did not try to impress me, she said. He blinked. I didn't know I was supposed to. That is why I remembered you. The words settled heavily in the air. He shifted uncomfortably. That's, he said carefully, not usually how these stories go. She tilted her head slightly. How do they go? He hesitated. Well, he said, usually the part where someone unknowingly insults a queen ends with execution. Her expression remained calm. That was considered. He froze. Considered, he repeated. Yes. He swallowed. But, she continued, I chose not to. He exhaled slowly. That's comforting, he said, in a very delayed way. She watched him. For 7 years, she said quietly. I remembered what you said. He frowned slightly. That seems inefficient, he said. Something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not amusement, something deeper. It was not inefficient, she said. It was instructive. He didn't know what that meant, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. He shifted his stance. So, he said carefully, this is a reunion. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she asked a question. Do you know, she said, why you are the only human who ever spoke to me that way? He opened his mouth, paused, considered his options. Poor impulse control, he offered. She stared at him. For a moment, he thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then, the faintest shift in her expression, not quite a smile, but close enough to be dangerous. Liam immediately regretted his answer, not because it was wrong, but because it was honest. Queen Nyx watched him with an intensity that made silence feel like a physical object. It rested between them, unmoving, patient, waiting to see which of them would disturb it first. He cleared his throat. In my experience, he said carefully, poor impulse control explains most of my life. She did not respond. That was becoming a pattern. He shifted his weight, glancing briefly at the curved walls as if they might offer an emergency exit, purely out of sympathy. They did not. Of course they didn't. They were probably loyal to her, the traitors. You were not afraid, she said. Her voice was quiet but absolute. He frowned slightly. I didn't know I was supposed to be. You did not sense what I was. He shrugged weakly. I sensed you were standing between me and finishing a repair I really wanted to finish. Her eyes remained fixed on his. And if you had known? He hesitated. He considered several answers. He chose the honest one again. I would have been more polite, he admitted. Her expression did not change, but something in the stillness of her posture shifted. Politeness, she said, is often a form of fear. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's deeply inconvenient, he said, because it was true. He'd seen it countless times. Officers pretending confidence, workers pretending agreement, entire crews pretending everything was fine, while systems quietly failed beneath their feet. Fear was efficient. Fear was predictable. Fear was safe, but it wasn't honest. She stepped closer, not aggressively, not threatening, just closer. You were honest, she said. He resisted the urge to point out that honesty had clearly resulted in his current situation, which included waking up in an alien queen's bedroom with no explanation. He folded his arms loosely. That happens occasionally, he said. She studied him. You told me, she continued, that leadership was not about control. He winced faintly. That sounded exactly like something he would say while elbow-deep in machinery and mildly irritated at the universe. I say a lot of things while fixing broken equipment, he said. Most of it isn't policy advice. It was not policy advice, she said. He waited. It was truth. That word lingered. Truth. It was a dangerous word. Flexible, subjective, heavy. He rubbed the back of his neck. With respect, he said, I was a maintenance technician. Her gaze did not waver. You still are. That was fair. He had no argument. The hum in the room shifted slightly, deepening into a tone he could feel in his chest rather than hear. It wasn't loud. It wasn't disruptive. But it was present, like the steady breathing of something too large to fully comprehend. He gestured vaguely at the room. So, he said, I assume this isn't Kepri. No. He nodded. That was reassuring. He had been worried he'd somehow missed a renovation. Where am I? She did not hesitate. Obscura. The word settled into his mind with weight. He had heard of Obscura. Everyone had. Not because it was loud or aggressive or expansionist, but because it was quiet, ancient, unmoving, a civilization that did not seek attention, which made it infinitely more unsettling. He exhaled slowly. You're home. Yes. He considered that. Then he pointed gently at the floor. Your room. Yes. He paused. There was only one logical conclusion. I want to clarify, he said carefully, that I did not request this. You did not. That was good. At least reality was still behaving predictably. He took a slow breath. His instincts were calm, which was, frankly, suspicious. He should be afraid. He should be panicking. He should be demanding answers, exits, explanations. But instead, he felt something else. Curiosity, which historically had been responsible for most of his problems. He studied her more carefully. Up close, she looked even more human, not in biology, in stillness. There was thought behind her eyes, observation, calculation, but also something else, something quieter. You brought me here, he said. It was not a question. Yes. He waited. She did not elaborate. He tilted his head slightly. That's generally considered rude. Her expression remained calm. I needed to speak with you. He blinked. 7 years later. Yes. He considered that. That was not normal. That was not casual. That was deliberate. Extremely deliberate. Why? He asked. The question lingered between them. For the first time, she did not answer immediately. She seemed to consider her words with unusual care, because whatever answer she gave mattered. Not politically, not strategically, personally. When you spoke to me, she said quietly, you did not see a queen. He frowned. I saw someone asking questions. Yes. He waited. Her voice softened, almost imperceptibly. You saw a person? He didn't know what to do with that, because to him it had been nothing. A moment, a conversation, forgettable. But to her, it had not been. He shifted slightly, uncomfortable under the weight of meaning he did not remember creating. I talk to everyone like that, he said. She tilted her head. I know. That confused him. Then why? Because, she said quietly, no one else talks to me that way. The room felt smaller, not physically, emotionally. He exhaled slowly. That seems unlikely. It is not. Her certainty was absolute. He searched her face. He saw no deception, no manipulation, only truth and something else, something far more dangerous. Loneliness. He rubbed his hands together awkwardly. Well, he said gently, statistically, there are billions of people. She held his gaze. And I chose to find you. That landed harder than he expected. He didn't have a joke ready for that, which was rare and deeply inconvenient. Liam did not know what response was appropriate when an alien queen calmly informed him she had spent 7 years finding him. There were no training manuals for that. He considered saying thank you. He immediately rejected that option. Instead, he said, that seems like an inefficient use of resources. Her expression did not change, but he sensed he had not offended her. If anything, she appeared to be studying him more closely, as if inefficiency itself was a fascinating concept. Efficiency, she said, is not always the correct priority. That's deeply upsetting to hear, he replied. I've built my entire career around avoiding unnecessary effort. She did not smile, but there was a pause that felt almost like one. The room hummed softly around them, its living surfaces faintly luminous. He had begun to suspect the room was not merely architecture. It reacted too subtly, too deliberately. When he shifted his stance, the light in the walls adjusted slightly, as though compensating for him. He pointed at the nearest curved surface. Is this room watching me? Yes, she said. He closed his eyes briefly. Of course it is. He rubbed his face. I would like the room to know that I am behaving extremely calmly. The room did not respond. He wasn't sure if that was reassuring or insulting. Nyx stepped past him, and the floor itself seemed to respond, its surface subtly reshaping to support her movement. She did not command the room. It anticipated her. He noticed that. He noticed everything. Technicians survived by noticing. This structure, he said cautiously, is biomechanical. Yes. He glanced at her. It's alive. Yes. He nodded slowly. That explains why it feels judgmental. She studied him. It is not judging you. That's exactly what something judgmental would want me to believe. She paused. That was humor. Yes, he said. A defense mechanism. She absorbed that. Against me? Against uncertainty. She tilted her head slightly, considering that. You are uncertain. That's generally what happens when I wake up in a sentient building owned by someone with a planetary jurisdiction. She seemed to accept this. Come, she said. She turned and walked toward a section of wall that had no visible seam. He did not move. She stopped, looked back at him. He gestured vaguely at the wall. That's a wall. Yes. And you're walking toward it. Yes. He waited. She waited. Does it know you're about to do that? He asked. Yes. The wall responded. It did not open. It unfolded. The surface separated in slow, fluid motion, layers peeling back silently, revealing a corridor beyond that glowed with the same pale, living light. He stared at it. Well, he said softly, that's horrifying. She stepped through without hesitation. He remained where he was. She looked back. You may follow. He pointed at the corridor. That wasn't there before. No, he nodded. I'm going to follow, he said carefully, but I want it clearly stated that I am uncomfortable with walls having opinions. She waited. He walked forward. As he passed through the opening, he felt it. Not physically, not pressure, awareness. The structure knew he was there. He resisted the urge to apologize to it. The corridor extended ahead in a gentle curve, its surfaces alive with faint motion, like distant currents moving beneath translucent skin. The air was warm, perfectly regulated. Of course it was. Nothing here was broken. He found that deeply suspicious. They walked in silence for several moments. He noticed there were no guards, no weapons, No visible surveillance devices, which meant the surveillance was invisible. That was worse. "You are not afraid," she said suddenly. He considered lying. He didn't. "I am," he admitted. "I'm just trying not to make it worse." She slowed slightly. "How would you make it worse?" He gestured vaguely. "Panicking, running, screaming." She considered that. "You believe those actions would be ineffective?" "Yes." She nodded once. "That is correct." He blinked. He hadn't expected validation. "That's comforting," he said. They continued walking. The corridor widened ahead, opening into a vast chamber. He stopped without meaning to. The ceiling arched impossibly high above them, filled with shifting constellations of soft, drifting light. Not projections, not artificial displays. Living systems. The walls pulsed gently, carrying streams of faint illumination, like rivers of energy beneath translucent skin. At the center of the chamber stood a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It resembled a throne, not built, grown. Its shape was elegant, curved, organic, rising from the floor as though the planet itself had chosen to form it. He stared at it. "That's yours," he said. It was not a question. "Yes." He nodded slowly. He had never met a ruler before, not directly. He had repaired equipment used by rulers. He had cursed systems installed by rulers. He had never stood beside one. It felt strangely normal, which made it more unsettling. He looked at her. "You could have anyone here." "Yes." "You chose me." "Yes." He hesitated. "Why?" She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before. "Because you saw me." He frowned slightly. "I see you now." "That is not the same." He didn't understand that. Not fully. He stepped forward slightly, studying the living architecture around them. "You brought me across interstellar distance," he said carefully. "Yes." "You found me." "Yes." "You took me." She did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. He exhaled slowly. "That's a lot of effort," he said. "Yes." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I once spent 3 days avoiding fixing a broken door because it required standing up." She watched him. "I am aware." He froze. "You are?" "Yes." He stared at her. There was only one logical conclusion. "You've been watching me." She did not deny it. The room hummed softly. He considered that, considered the implications, considered the sheer scale of attention required for a queen to observe a single technician across years and distance. He exhaled slowly. "That's," he said carefully, "either extremely flattering or deeply concerning." She stepped closer. "Both," she said. He believed her. That was the problem. Liam did not speak for several seconds. There was a very specific kind of silence that followed the realization that an alien queen had been observing your life for years, and it did not leave room for casual conversation. He folded his arms, mostly so his hands would stop looking like they were considering panicking independently. "How much watching?" he asked carefully. Nyx did not hesitate. "Enough." He waited. She did not elaborate. He exhaled slowly. "That is not a number." "No." He nodded once, absorbing that. His brain, ever practical, immediately began reviewing his past behavior with sudden and horrifying clarity. Every embarrassing moment, every time he had argued with machinery, every time he had eaten something questionable and regretted it immediately. He closed his eyes briefly. "I would like to formally apologize," he said, "for everything I have ever done while alone." She tilted her head slightly. "You believe your actions were incorrect." "I believe," he said, "that privacy is a deeply comforting illusion." She seemed to consider that carefully. "I did not observe you continuously," she said. He opened one eye. "That's slightly better." "I observed moments." He opened both eyes. That was worse. "Moments," he repeated. "Yes." He rubbed his forehead. "Please tell me none of those moments involved me attempting to fix something by hitting it." She was silent. He lowered his hand slowly. "If they involved me attempting to fix something by hitting it." "Yes," he sighed. "In my defense," he said, "it works more often than it should." She studied him, her expression neutral but attentive, as though this was valuable data. The vast chamber hummed around them, its living architecture quietly responsive to their presence. He could feel it now, faint but undeniable, like standing inside the breathing lungs of something too vast to fully perceive. He walked a slow circle, examining the throne without touching it. "You changed things," he said. It was not a guess. It was a conclusion. "Yes." He stopped. He looked at her. "How much?" She answered without hesitation. Military expansion was reduced by 17%. He blinked. He had not expected a number. "Why?" She met his gaze. "You said expansion without understanding was inefficient." He stared at her. "I said that while fixing an air recycler." "Yes." He rubbed his face again. "You restructured a civilization," he said carefully, "based on something a tired technician said while covered in coolant." "Yes." He lowered his hand slowly. "That seems irresponsible." She did not react defensively. It was correct. He hesitated. That was the problem. He didn't know if she was wrong. He paced slowly, the living floor adjusting beneath his steps, responding to him like a patient, curious animal. "You don't know me," he said. "I do." "You know observations," he corrected. "That's different." She was silent. He gestured vaguely. "You've seen fragments, moments. But that's not the same as knowing someone." She stepped closer. "It was enough." He shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't." The words hung between them. He wasn't angry. He wasn't accusing her. He was stating something simple, something human. "You built meaning around something incomplete," he continued. "That's dangerous." Her eyes remained fixed on his. "Explain." He exhaled slowly. "You met me once," he said. 7 years ago." "Yes." "You saw a version of me." "Yes." He nodded. "But people aren't fixed points. We change. We contradict ourselves. We make decisions that don't match who we were yesterday." She listened. "You didn't find the same person," he said gently. "You found the idea of one." Silence filled the chamber. The living walls pulsed faintly, their soft light flowing like distant currents. For the first time since he had met her, Nyx did not look certain. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. "I found you," she said. He met her gaze. "Yes," he agreed. "You did." He hesitated. Then he added with quiet honesty, "But I'm not the answer to whatever question you asked yourself back then." The words did not wound her. They unsettled her. He could see it, not in her posture, not in her face, but in the stillness. She had spent years moving towards something she believed was stable. Now, for the first time, it moved. She spoke carefully. "You changed me." He shook his head. "No," he said. "You changed yourself." She did not respond. He stepped closer, not out of confidence, but out of necessity. "You chose what to do with what I said," he continued. "That wasn't me. That was you." Her eyes searched his face, looking for something she could not define. "I do not regret it," she said. "I didn't say you should." He gave a small, careful shrug. "I just don't want you thinking I'm some kind of cosmic instruction manual." She studied him. "You are not." "Good," he said, "because I break easily." That finally caused something to shift. Not a smile, but close. He noticed, and for reasons he did not fully understand, that made the vast living chamber feel slightly less overwhelming. Not safe, but less alone. He glanced around at the immense architecture, at the throne grown from living matter, at the endless quiet authority of her world. Then he looked back at her. There was only one question that mattered now. He asked it gently. "What happens next?" Nyx did not answer immediately. The silence that followed Liam's question was not empty. It was active, thinking, adjusting. The living chamber seemed to slow its pulse, its faint currents of light dimming slightly as though the structure itself was listening for her decision. Liam waited. He had learned over years of repairing delicate systems that forcing an answer too early often made things worse. Eventually she spoke. "That depends," she said quietly. "On you." He blinked. "That seems like a mistake," he replied. She tilted her head slightly. "Explain." He gestured vaguely at himself. "I am not a reliable strategic resource." She studied him. You underestimate your influence. I am deeply qualified to evaluate my own incompetence, he said. She did not react, but he could see the faintest shift in her posture. Not dismissal, consideration. He walked a slow circle around the chamber, more to think than to move. The living floor adjusted beneath him, subtle and precise. It was unsettling being supported by something that was not pretending to be inanimate. You said your people value hierarchy, he said. Yes. And certainty. Yes. He nodded. Then bringing me here was disruptive. Yes. That answer came without hesitation. He stopped walking. He turned back to her. You knew that? Yes. He frowned slightly. Why? Her eyes remained steady. Because certainty can become weakness. He absorbed that. That was not something rulers usually admitted. He crossed his arms. Your council, he said carefully. They know about me. It was not a question. Yes. He exhaled slowly. And they're not happy. No. He nodded. That tracked. He glanced upward at the vast ceiling, its slow-moving constellations drifting like patient thoughts. So, he said, I am a political problem. She stepped closer. You are not a problem. He raised an eyebrow. That's not what political problems usually hear. She did not smile. You are a variable. He grimaced slightly. That's worse. She tilted her head. Explain. Problems can be solved, he said. Variables are unpredictable. She considered that. Yes. He rubbed the back of his neck. I've never been described as a variable before. She watched him closely. You are not easily categorized. He snorted softly. That's because most categorization systems assume competence. The chamber hummed faintly. He realized slowly that he was not being restrained. Not physically, not emotionally, not strategically. She was allowing uncertainty, allowing him. That was new. He studied her carefully. You could keep me here, he said. It was not an accusation. It was fact. Yes. You could control where I go. Yes. You could decide everything. Yes. Each answer was calm, honest. He appreciated that. He appreciated honesty, even when it was terrifying. He hesitated. But you haven't. No. He exhaled slowly. That mattered, more than he wanted to admit. Why? He asked. Her voice, when she answered, was quieter than before. Because that would make you something else. He frowned. Something else? Yes. He waited. Not you. That landed harder than anything she had said before. He did not expect that. He did not expect restraint from someone with absolute power. He shifted his weight slightly. That's, he said carefully, unexpected. She studied him. You expected control. Yes. That would be inefficient. He blinked. That's my argument. Yes. He stared at her. Something strange was happening. Something subtle. She was not trying to possess him. She was trying to understand him. That was far more dangerous. He walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, toward the living throne. He did not approach it directly. He circled it, studying its shape, its presence. It was not a symbol of domination. It was a symbol of responsibility. He stopped. He looked back at her. You said I changed things, he said. Yes. You reduced expansion. Yes. You allowed uncertainty. Yes. He hesitated. That takes strength. She did not respond, but he saw it, the truth of it. Strength did not always look like control. Sometimes it looked like restraint. He folded his arms. What does your council want? He asked. Her eyes did not leave his. They want stability. He nodded. And I represent instability. Yes. He exhaled slowly. That makes sense. He turned away slightly, looking at the vast chamber, the alien architecture, the quiet authority of a civilization that had existed longer than his species had known interstellar travel. He was small here, insignificant, and yet he mattered. He didn't like that. He preferred being invisible. Invisible things survived. He spoke without turning around. You could send me back. The words were simple, heavy, honest. Silence filled the chamber. Then, yes, she said. He turned. Their eyes met. She was not lying. She would let him go. He hadn't expected that. Not really. He studied her face carefully. She was not afraid, but she was uncertain, and that uncertainty was real. He realized something then. She had not brought him here to own him. She had brought him here to face something she did not fully understand, herself. He gave a small, tired smile. You know, he said gently, most people don't go to this much effort just to have a conversation. Her voice was quiet. I am not most people. He nodded. No, she wasn't. And neither, apparently, was he anymore. The transport chamber was smaller than Liam expected. He wasn't sure why he had expected something grand, something ceremonial, a massive machine surrounded by alien symbols and dramatic lighting. Instead, it was quiet, circular, alive. The walls curved inward like folded wings, their pale surface breathing with faint, steady pulses of light. At the center stood a raised platform no wider than 2 meters, smooth and unmarked. Simple, efficient, final. He stood at the edge of it, hands resting loosely at his sides. Nyx stood across from him. Neither of them had spoken for a while. He wasn't sure what else there was to say. This will return you to your vessel, she said at last. Her voice was calm, controlled, but not distant. He nodded. That's convenient, he replied. I was worried I'd have to explain my absence using words like alien abduction, and historically that hasn't gone well for people. She tilted her head slightly. You were not abducted. He raised an eyebrow. I lost consciousness and woke up in another star system. Yes. He waited. She said nothing else. He gave a small smile. I'm willing to compromise and call it aggressive transportation. She did not object. The living walls hummed faintly, as if amused. He studied the platform. This is faster than conventional jump travel, he said. Yes. How? She hesitated. Then carefully, she answered. It does not move your body. He blinked. That's concerning. It moves your position. He stared at her. That's worse. She watched him closely. You will remain intact. That's exactly what a system that doesn't keep people intact would say. She said nothing. He stepped onto the platform. The surface adjusted instantly, subtle currents of warmth stabilizing his stance. He exhaled slowly. This was it. He was leaving. He didn't know how he felt about that. He looked at her. For the first time since waking in her chamber, he saw something different in her posture. Not authority, not certainty, vulnerability. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. He realized suddenly that this had never been about control. It had been about risk. She had risked uncertainty. She had risked change. She had risked him. You could have kept me, he said quietly. Yes. You didn't. No. He hesitated. That was the right decision. She did not respond immediately. When she did, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. I know. The chamber hummed around them. He looked at her ears, their long, elegant shape unmistakable. 7 years ago, he hadn't noticed them. Or maybe he had, and simply hadn't cared. He had treated her like a person. Not a queen, not an idea, a person. And she had carried that moment across time and space. That was extraordinary and terrifying and human in its own way. He shifted his weight slightly. I'm not special, he said. Her gaze remained steady. You are different. He smiled faintly. That's usually just another word for inconvenient. She stepped closer, closer than she had ever stood before. Liam Fox, she said quietly, you showed me something my world had forgotten. He frowned slightly. I fixed an air recycler. You showed me uncertainty, she said. Choice, freedom from inevitability. He didn't know what to say to that, because he hadn't meant to do any of it. He had simply existed. She had done the rest. He realized then that change did not require intention, only presence. He took a slow breath. You'll be fine, he said gently. She studied him. You cannot know that. He gave a small shrug. No, he admitted, but neither can you. That was the point. Uncertainty, choice, possibility. She understood that now. He saw it in her eyes. The machine beneath his feet began to respond, its hum deepening slightly. Time was running out. He felt it. He hesitated. There was one more thing. "If you ever need advice again," he said carefully, "I strongly recommend asking someone more qualified." For the first time, unmistakably, she smiled. It was small, subtle, but real. "I will consider that," she said. He nodded. That was enough. The light around the platform began to intensify, soft currents of pale energy wrapping around him like careful hands. He felt no pain, no fear, only movement. He looked at her one last time. She did not look like a queen. She looked like someone standing at the edge of something unknown, just like him. "Nyx," he said. She met his gaze. "Yes." He hesitated. Then he said the simplest truth he had. "Thank you." The light consumed him. The chamber vanished. The living walls, the endless twilight, her, all gone. He was somewhere else. Cold, metal, familiar. He stood in the maintenance corridor of his ship. The same broken panels still hung open beside him. The same tools rested on the floor. No time had passed, or perhaps all of it had. He exhaled slowly. He was home. He expected everything to feel smaller. Instead, it felt clearer. He was still a technician, still insignificant, still ordinary. But he understood something now. Ordinary moments were not small. They were infinite. He looked down at the broken regulator. It stared back at him with quiet defiance. He smiled faintly. "Don't worry," he told it. "I'm still deeply unqualified." Behind him, far beyond distance or time, on a world that lived in endless twilight, a queen sat upon a living throne and allowed uncertainty to exist beside her. Not as weakness, but as freedom. And for the first time in her life, she did not try to control it.